Hello everyone and good evening. My name is Don Arleth and you're watching World News Tonight here on TVP World. Tonight we'll discuss the most recent developments in the European Parliament, including the bloc's top positions, support for Ukraine, and more. We'll be joined by Czech MEP from the European People's Party, Tomáš Zdechovský. So stay with us. But first off, let's go ahead and start off with the headlines. Condemning Orban and affirming support for Ukraine, these were the results of the first resolution passed in the European Parliament. EU court rules on vaccine controversy ahead of von der Leyen's crucial confirmation vote. And the UK looks to rebuild relations with Europe under new leadership. And we start off tonight in Strasbourg, and the new structures of the European Parliament are taking shape. Many of the key positions, including a president, vice presidents, and quaestors, are now decided. The main issue today was the new Parliament's stance on supporting Ukraine and a resolution which gave the first insight as to how each MEP voted. Now, joining us, our correspondent Sasha Farbach is in Strasbourg, coming to us live, and he has more. Good evening, Sasha. Now, can you tell us what do we learn?
Good evening, Don.
Yes, good evening. What did we learn today about this resolution, and what good news about Poland do you have for us?
Yeah, that's right, Don. Indeed, you already mentioned that resolution, support of Ukraine. That's really important for this parliament. It was important for the previous one. As you mentioned there earlier, it did pass. So let's get some details on those numbers. 495 for that, 137 against, and about 47 abstentions. Significant here is the following, is that we weren't so surprised by the EPP, but some, in terms of the ECR, broke rank. We have about 7 from the ECR that decided to go against this, including 5 from Romania, but also from the left, a kind of disarray on the left, with some abstaining, some in favor, some against. And it's no surprise there very much that the Hungarians, the patriots of Europe, very much the Europe of sovereign nations, as far-right new groups here in Parliament, did very much vote against all this. Interesting point, Peter Magyar's party, if I just mention that quickly, TISA, who now joined the EPP, decided to abstain. So this is going to have people wonder here of their stance. So a bit of an uncertainty how they were going to function within the EPP bloc. But also I wanted to just go into another big point here. And as you said, there's more voting on quaestors, more voting on all this, but key also in constituting these committees here, which are very important. There's 20 of them with 4 subcommittees ranging from budget, ranging to foreign affairs. Now, we don't have all those names yet. We don't know how many countries or which groups will be getting what, but we did speak to Andrzej Halicki of the EPP from Poland to get his view on what Poland might be getting. Let's roll that now for you.
Well, I can confirm, yes, the ITRE Committee of Industry will be on the top of our priorities, and I think that Polish representative will be the responsible person for the next on that.
So there we have it. It will be 2 likely very powerful committees for Poland, including industry. Now that's a very important one, being very much about how things are planned here for the plenary on that position for the parliament, then in conjunction with the trilateral agreements with the other institutions. So 2 wins for Poland. We don't know exactly who that will be yet, but it looks like more of a Polish presence, more of an EPP presence in this European Parliament. And that's the latest. Back to you, Don.
Okay, Sasha Farbach reporting live to us from the European Parliament in Strasbourg. Thank you for your report. After being arrested on 11 charges of abuse of power and other offenses, a Warsaw court has ruled that former Deputy Justice Minister and opposition MP must be released from police custody. The judges argue that Marcin Romanowski still has immunity as a member of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Here in Poland, his immunity has already been stripped by Parliament. Now the Ministry of Justice will seek the same in the Council of Europe.
Marcin Romanowski is a free man, the opposition MP's lawyer announced today.
My arrest was nothing more than a political and media setup.
The former Deputy Justice Minister, now released from detention, is accused of misusing public funds at the Ministry of Justice.
It's like a scene straight out of a crime film. A suspect gets out on a legal technicality, hiding behind his own questionable immunity. But 11 charges, including involvement in an organised criminal group, don't just disappear. The credits haven't rolled yet.
His release was possible due to the prosecution's failure to secure court approval for the 3-month temporary detention of the MP.
I assure you, if I have made mistakes, I definitely won't be avoiding responsibility.
The prosecution argued that it had ordered opinions proving Romanowski did not have immunity as a member of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. The court, meanwhile, says he does.
For the first time, a court has admitted that Donald Tusk's government is violating the law. We will not leave it at that.
Following the court decision, questions arose about whether the proceedings against Romanowski can be continued.
We still have a group of suspects. The investigation is still unfolding, and there is still evidence pointing to the possibility that these crimes were committed.
Bringing former officials to justice was one of the primary campaign promises made by Donald Tusk's coalition ahead of last year's parliamentary elections.
Trouble is on the horizon for Ursula von der Leyen ahead of her crucial vote in the European Parliament tomorrow. The European Court of Justice ruled against the European Commission today in the COVID vaccine transparency case. This could potentially throw a stick in the spokes of von der Leyen's efforts to get re-elected as head of the Commission.
The European Court of Justice repealed the decision of the European Commission to conceal parts of contracts on COVID-19 vaccines. Several Green MEPs called for details of these agreements to be released back in 2021. The Commission says the contracts with pharmaceutical companies forbid it from revealing everything.
The Commission had to strike a balance here between the genuine interest of the public to know and, on the other hand, commercial interest of the companies and requirements and obligations which came out of the signed contracts.
But the ECJ was not convinced by these explanations. The Commission signed contracts worth €71 billion for deliveries of more than 4 billion COVID-19 vaccines. The lack of total transparency on huge purchases like these cast a shadow over the Commission and its president.
Justification was indeed not sufficient, and personal data of members of the negotiation team should be also revealed. This was the decision of the court.
The Commission now has 2 months to appeal the decision. TVP World's correspondent from Brussels, Sasha Farbach, asked some of the MEPs whether the court's ruling can affect tomorrow's vote.
We need to be reassured that we can support. As Socialists and Democrats, we have very clear priorities, and so we want to look at that, and at the same time we also want to have more clearness about the transparency issue. So to be frank, at the moment we haven't taken any decision, and it depends on the capacity of von der Leyen to convince us.
Members of von der Leyen's party, on the other hand, are not overly worried about her re-election chances.
There is the move to the right, but not to the far right, to the center. And because of that, I think that we'll have very important debates also on the revision of several policies. It will be one of the goals also for the new Commission, led by the same person, but not in the same direction.
While the case is not over yet, this is definitely something that Ursula von der Leyen did not need ahead of her crucial vote in the EU Parliament tomorrow. She will need at least 361 votes out of 720 to become re-elected as the EU Commission President. From Warsaw, TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
The UK today identified resetting relations with the European Union after Brexit as one of the government's new priorities. The planned bridge building between Britain and Brussels was among a series of goals laid out in the state opening of Parliament, a ceremony rich in pageantry, which King Charles unveiled the legislative agenda.
In a tradition dating back more than 6 centuries, an official known as Black Rod summons members of Parliament for the King's speech. They assembled in the House of Lords to hear King Charles outline a package of more than 35 bills written by the new government, chief among them breathing new life into relations with the European Union.
My government will seek to reset the relationship with European partners and work to improve the United Kingdom's trade and investment relationship with the European Union. My ministers will seek a new security pact to strengthen cooperation on the mutual threats faced by the United Kingdom and the European Union.
The King's speech also outlined continuing support for Ukraine. Commentators say building better European relations will help Britain in a wider context.
Close ties will, on the defense front and in terms of international relations, will continue and maybe even become even stronger than they already have done since February 2022.
Welcome. Good to see you.
So keen is the UK's new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, to build relations that within hours of being appointed, he flew out to meet his Polish counterpart, Radosław Sikorski. Poland's foreign minister is currently in London, where he's accepting the Chatham House Prize on behalf of Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The award recognises the PM's work towards restoring democracy in Poland. Leaders who mourn the loss of Britain from the European fold will likely be welcoming the UK's new position.
50 European leaders will travel to England for the 4th edition of the European Political Community Forum. This will be a unique opportunity for the host country's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to present a more hopeful vision of the EU's future and discuss some of the most burning issues. Our correspondent, Claudia Czerwinska, will be covering that event tomorrow and is joining us now live from London. Hello, Claudia. Good evening. And can you tell us about the EPC Forum, exactly why it's important and what's on the agenda?
Well, the EPC Forum was first invented by French President Emmanuel Macron in 2022 after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. This event is going to take place in Blenheim Palace, a historic UNESCO heritage site, which is incredibly important because it's also symbolic. It's a birthplace of Winston Churchill himself. Therefore, we're going to see, according to the latest information delivered by the FCDO here in the United Kingdom, 47 leaders. We're going to see Charles Michel representing the European Union as well. And this is a wonderful opportunity for these leaders and the new government headed by Prime Minister Keir Starmer to have the discussion about the security of Europe, to have the discussion about the future of Europe and the future of Ukraine. As well. As you mentioned before, and as the report mentioned before, in Chatham House, which you can see right behind me, this very moment, Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski accepted an award. There was also a very interesting Q&A session where there was a question regarding tomorrow's meeting, where he said very specifically that he is ready, as Poland's Foreign Minister, to support the UK's claim and the Labour's government's claim to get closer to the EU, because that was the overlaying message of Keir Starmer ahead of the election and post-election as well, that the UK will try and reestablish and reset the relationship. And I think this is incredibly important. However, we need to remember that Keir Starmer has to bring in the new energy and not only focus on trying to rekindling the relationship between the UK and the EU, but also focusing on some of the most important problems, such as irregular migration, disinformation, and lack of energy security. Those are going to be some of the most important subjects on the agenda with Ukrainian security and the future of the European Union tomorrow. And since the very early morning hours until the late evening hours, I'm going to be bringing you more on the latest developments. Back to you, Don.
Okay, Claudia Czerwinska reporting for us live from London. Thank you very much, and have a good day tomorrow. Poland achieves a new milestone and now has the 3rd largest army in NATO when it comes to troop numbers. Newly released figures show that places it just behind only the United States and Turkey.
Purchases of high-end military equipment is one thing, but someone needs to be able to operate it.
Poland has the third largest army in NATO. Even if the data from the defence expenditure of NATO countries report, published today by the alliance, are only estimates for this year, Poland is the first army in Europe has become a fact.
This news comes from Tomasz Siewiera, the head of Poland's National Security Bureau. The Polish army can boast more than 216,000 personnel. It is followed by France, Germany and Italy. But that's not all. Out of all NATO members, Poland also spends the most on defense in terms of GDP percentage, at more than 4%. And it doesn't intend to stop there.
We will, next year, I see that spending on defense in our country will grow also, not only in the nominal terms, but also as a share of GDP.
Another reason behind Poland's constant improvement of its military are the hybrid attacks from Belarus. Alexander Lukashenko's regime keeps sending hundreds of Middle Eastern migrants to the Polish border on a daily basis, forcing them to attack border guards and police officers.
We will launch a new operation starting August 1st, dubbed Safe Podlasia Region. It will include up to 17,000 soldiers. Today, we're using around 6,000 soldiers there, but we can send more if needed.
The importance of sheer numbers when it comes to manpower cannot be overstated. The war in Ukraine is the perfect example of that. One of the main advantages of the Russian invaders is the seemingly unending supply of soldiers. That's why the Polish army keeps recruiting as much as possible, and now it has tangible results.
Now for some bad news for Ukraine. Germany is expected to cut its military aid to Ukraine by half in 2025. And joining us now to discuss this, live from Kyiv, is our correspondent in Ukraine, Oz Chatterjee. Good evening, Oz. Now, how is this news going to be received there in Kyiv?
Good evening. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be received particularly well. So this news has come to us via Reuters, who have seen what they say is a draft budget. So it's not officially released by the German government yet, but it's a draft budget of what they're planning for next year. And that seems to be half of what they paid Ukraine this year, dropping from 8 billion euros to 4 billion euros. Now, it's understood that Berlin is hoping that the shortfall will be made up in the $50 billion loan heading to Ukraine from frozen Russian assets seized by the European Union. However, this news is still not going to be treated lightly here in Kyiv, particularly given the surge of Donald Trump in the polls since his assassination attempt. Lots of American commentators are saying that Donald Trump has a very, very strong chance now of being the next president, appointing J.D. Vance, another anti-Ukraine senator, to his vice president pick. There is a lot of worry here in Kyiv that an incoming Trump presidency will cut off all financial aid to Ukraine. That's what Viktor Orban seems to be saying. That's what Trump has said on many occasions. And that's certainly what J.D. Vance has been hoping for. So this news coming from Berlin will be relatively unwelcome here. What Kyiv is looking for now, particularly with these security agreements they've signed, is promises of more aid no matter what happens in the White House, particularly from the largest EU members, the largest EU member states like Berlin, like France, like Italy.
Yes, well, it seems like as long as it takes was rather short-lived, at least for Germany. Oz Chatterjee reporting for us live from Kyiv. Thank you for your report. The families of loved ones who died when Malaysian aircraft MH17 was shot out of the sky by pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine have been marking the 10th anniversary since the disaster. International prosecutors said last year that they had found strong indications that Russian President Vladimir Putin approved the use of a Russian missile system that shot down the plane, but lacked sufficient evidence to pursue a conviction.
Relatives of passengers and crew killed when the Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 was blasted out of the air by pro-Russian rebels gathered to mark the tragedy. It's 10 years since the aircraft was brought down during the war in Donbass. A total of 298 lives were lost, over half of whom were Dutch. The brutal attack has been described as a turning point.
After this, there was a clear understanding by international community and by Ukrainians that Russia is actually indeed present in eastern Ukraine, that Russia is acting that pro-Russian rebels and Russian troops are not there just with Kalashnikovs.
MH17 was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it was downed by a Buk missile. Just 3 people have been prosecuted. Commentators say the lack of consequences had a major impact when Moscow launched its full-scale invasion.
That's why Russian military feels like having free hand in Ukraine and committing war crimes against civilians. And Russia could strike Ukraine with bombs, missiles and drones.
Locals mark the crash site in the Russian-controlled Donetsk region. Moscow denies it was to blame, but relatives want Russia brought to book over the air disaster.
And now, joining us here on TVP World to discuss the recent developments in the European Parliament is Czech MEP from the European People's Party, Tomáš Zdechovský. Hello, sir, and thank you for joining us tonight.
It's every time. It's my pleasure.
Now, concerning the ECR, do you think it might potentially work with the EP and others? How do you think that the ECR is going to vote on Thursday for a president of the Commission?
ECR is now divided to 2 parts. One part is strongly against Ursula von der Leyen and one part wants to support her. I spoke today with many of my colleagues, especially from Poland and from the other countries, from Italy. And so from Italy, I think they will vote for Ursula von der Leyen because Ursula and EPP and other groups were very constructive in decision that ECR has its 2 vice chair and 1 questor, and I think that this is one thing what shows that ECR can be constructive part of European Parliament and European Union institution.
Now, in terms of this Pfizer-gate ruling that we saw come out today, what impact do you think that, if any, is going to have on Ursula von der Leyen's bid for a second term?
I think it will have impact, but not so important. Many of members European Parliament knows the story, knows how was it difficult really to negotiate something with this global company. How was it difficult in this time? I remember my case when the parliament was closed. I was as military man, as the reservist, sent it by Czech army to the hospital, and in hospital I worked in front line. And with my hands, I was working with many old people, and many old people die in my hands also. In this moment, I was not thinking about them when we will be vaccinated. But I asked only for one thing, why we are not vaccinated. Also, it's another story, and I cannot criticize Ursula von der Leyen and many of my colleagues for some reason that she didn't give all details, because competitiveness of EU and other things were absolutely important in this moment.
Now, the first resolution passed in the new term of the European Parliament today, and it offers clear support for Ukraine. What are the most important aspects of that, and how MEPs commented on what the outcome will be, or the votes for, how the MEPs voted on that resolution?
I think it's very symbolic. This resolution, first resolution, it's about Ukraine to show that Ukraine has it still systematically support from European Parliament. And second things, you can read all the details. And one of these details is criticism of Viktor Orban, that Orban is now president or Hungary is the president country for European Union. And Viktor Orban made the visit first to the Ukraine and second to the Russia. He met Putin and then to the China. Also, it's very important signal and it's very important important symbol for all European Democrats that we are behind the Ukraine and Ukraine has its full support of European Union.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask you about the European Commission and the news that it released that it will only send low-level representatives to informal meetings under the Hungarian presidency. Now, do you think that this is a serious blow to Viktor Orban, or is this kind of like just a slap on the wrist?
I don't like it that the European Commission is behaving so. I think that if Viktor Orban has his presidency, also the European Commission is part of the presidency and they are much more bureaucrats would have to really follow all the meetings. And I think that it's necessary in this case not to politicize European Commission. European Commission is much more neutral and the role of European Commission is another. As me as member of European Parliament, I can criticize every time the Viktor Orban, but general the position of Commission must be for all 27 European countries. Also in this way I disagree with this European Commission position, and I think it's a little bit naive. And
do you think it sets a dangerous precedent? That if they do this now with Hungary, then it kind of breaks down barriers and it could happen more frequently in the future?
Yeah, Viktor Orban really behaved a little bit other as another politicians, but he's losing his support in European Union, and you can show it in another way. You can show it if Viktor Orban asked the Prime Minister of all European countries to come on some meetings in Budapest. They can send it there to people, the Minister of Foreign Affairs or someone who is not in the highest position in the country, but not European Commission. European Commission has another role, and in this case, of course, Viktor Orban has to know that he will be isolated. But general problem of Viktor Orban is that he is for a long time not in the same wave with another European politicians.
Yeah,
and this is crucial for him and for European Union.
Yeah, he's definitely lost a lot of support. Now, there's been a little bit of chatter, and this is something I wanted to ask you about Hungary's presidency and cutting it short and actually passing it over to Poland early. Have you heard of such a scenario? And how likely or how possible could that be?
I didn't. Also, I don't know about that. I don't know any detail. I think that it's much more speculation.
More speculation. Well, we do have some time ahead of us with Hungary. So I'd like to thank you, Tomasz Zdechowski, Czech MEP, European People's Party. It's always a pleasure having you on. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Same for me, and I wish you a pleasant evening.
Thank you. And that's all the time we have on this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.